Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, and our dear friend, our brother, Professor Marandi, is here with us. Welcome back, Professor.
Thank you, Nima. It's always a great pleasure being on your show.
Let me start, Professor Marandi, with the new targets because right before coming to this podcast, before coming to this live, we had Pete Hexet together with General King talking about the targets. How precise are the targets of the United States in Iran? We know that they have targeted a pharmaceutical, not a, but some pharmaceutical companies in Iran, which are related, providing remedies for the cancer, for the medicine for the cancer, for these sort of patients. And what is the target? Not only pharmaceutical companies, but also a new target. Yesterday we've learned they hit a new school which was killed, you know 10 kids together with the teacher. What are the targets? Because considering what Pete Hexet tries to picture for the West in the mainstream media, and what is the reality on the ground in Iran.
They're lying. It's clear as day for anyone in Iran that they're targeting homes, apartment blocks. They're I just told you before the show that they have been targeting poultry farms uh, in order to wipe out the food industry in the country. They've been targeting pharmaceutical companies. They've been targeting schools and hospitals, universities. They've been targeting important universities in the city of Tehran as well as in other cities, places where young people go to get educated so that tomorrow they can build their homes, their communities, their cities, their country. This is basically what they've been doing. And the reason is that they're frustrated. They cannot strike and destroy the hundreds of underground missile bases, the hundreds of underground drone bases, the many factories that produce missiles and drones, and other key assets that will be revealed as the war continues or when the Trump regime begins its invasion of the islands or other areas of in Iran. Uh, so their revenge is on ordinary people. Just the night before last, Nima, the night before last, a walk away. It's like a 30-minute walk from where I am now. Less, a 20-minute walk from where I am now. They bombed a demonstration. They fired missiles at a demonstration because at night, across the city of Tehran and across the country, people gather, large numbers of people. When I travel across the city, sometimes at night to go to a studio or just to some place, you go by many of them, small, medium size, huge. Sometimes they're just people in the neighborhood. Sometimes they're official gatherings, which are uh, very large, like in Engelab Square, sorry, or Khorasan Square, or all these other Tajrish Square and all these other places. Near this place where I am now, they bombed in near Artish Square. They there was a gathering. They bombed it. They fired missiles at them, and a woman was killed. She died. She was badly wounded, and then I just received news literally 20 minutes ago that she died last night from someone who was there. So this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with monsters. The Trump regime, the Netanyahu regime, these are monsters. The Zionists, the collective West, these regimes in the Persian Gulf that have been hosting these bases and facilitating the airstrikes for the last for over a month now. These are all monsters, and they can they constantly try to hide this, and it doesn't really matter if it's like pro-Trump media or in the West or anti-Trump media. They they made this like Trump. but they have no problem with killing kids. They have no problem with murdering demonstrators. I mean, we discussed this before. When the demonstration, the Quds Day demonstration, which I participated in on the last Friday of Ramadan, when they bombed it and a woman was killed there was a lot of footage. I tweeted it, others did. No, none of the mainstream media or legacy media or Epstein class controlled media in the West showed this. Even though it would be like sort of like footage of the year. And people, of course, did not stampede. They didn't run away. They stood their ground, and it's happening across the country. As I said, just the night before last, near Artish Square, and um, in Hamadan, I know of another strike. In Anzali City, I know of another strike. All of these, I put footage of them online. The one the night before last, I don't have any footage of that, but the West doesn't. So it's not as if the opponents of Trump in the West, they have any humanity. They just dislike Trump. But this is the daily reality. It's they're constantly striking. Their focus is on civilians. They bomb trucks that take goods from city A to city B. They bomb ambulances. I mean, right now in Lebanon, they're striking all the ambulances. They've murdered large numbers of medics in Lebanon. Why? Because they want as many people to die as possible. But the Western media is not dwelling on this. They're trying to do to Lebanon what they did to Gaza, and have no doubt. Ultimately, when this war comes to an end, uh, Iran will make sure that Lebanon is a part of any agreement, and its allies across the axis of resistance. The Israeli regime will not be able to take Lebanon and annex it like in Syria and under the government of Jolani, the Al Qaeda leader, where they are completely
I
indifferent to
think
all
that's
what's going
important,
on.
Professor Marandi. Sorry for interrupting. That's important because right now we've learned from the Israeli Defense Minister Katz. He's talking about Israel Katz. He's talking about they're gonna keep the southern part of Lebanon, some part of it, because as a buffer zone, as security zone, something like that.
Yeah, that's not going to be tolerated. Neither Hezbollah is going to tolerate that, nor the axis of resistance is going to tolerate that. And Iran, as a part of the axis of resistance, will not tolerate that.
Professor Marandi, the other part, we've learned they attacked the water resources in one of the cities I happen to know because it's located in Khuzestan, in city of Haftkel. I know the city. I know that the city doesn't have anything to do with military industrial complex, with nuclear program, with nothing. And do you think that if they continue with these sort of attacks on water resources, which is important for these cities who are far away, from big cities, they have, the management problem if something happens, because they're trying to bring suffering to the people. It seems that they're trying to do this to put pressure on the government through the society, which they don't understand. If they try to do that, they don't understand the Iranians, in my opinion. But what would be the response if they continue with this sort of attitude?
Well, you're right. They targeted the water resources of that city, and of course, it's not in the Western media. And that in general, Nima, nowhere near our borders do we have significant military installations. Nowhere. All of the let's say underground bases for missiles and drones, they're deep inside Iran. What the underground bases that are near the borders are there for invasions. So if there's an invasion, they will be met by people who are very well trenched they're very well uh, in place. They're entrenched. They have underground facilities for resistance, but there's no major industrial uh, military industrial center or any major base near any of the borders, because that would be foolish. They're all deep inside so that they cannot be easily accessed. But it's not just there where they targeted the water resources. A few days ago, they targeted the desalination plant in Qeshm Island, and it's an island with a significant population. But Iran has warned that if this continues, it's going to target desalination plants in occupied Palestine and on the other side of the Persian Gulf, because remember, from all of them are complicit in this war. They're all a part of a broad coalition. The Israeli regime, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, they're all in the same camp. So the Americans and the Israelis coordinate all their strikes. When they bomb uh, demonstrations in different cities, when they bomb people who are on the streets waving flags, it's done in coordination. They're completely coordinated. But the Americans, they do it from these regimes that are family dictatorships. And therefore, Iran will seek revenge in order to prevent it from continuing by striking these regimes in the Persian Gulf and the Israeli regime as well. And Iran has already done this before. So I think Trump recognizes the dangers. When they targeted Iran's uh, gas installations, Iran retaliated immediately and did far greater devastation. Why? To prevent this from continuing. And then Trump backed down and he said, I didn't know anything about it, which is nonsense. They're fully coordinated. He may not know about it because he may have not known about it personally because he was busy playing golf or something. But it's coordinated. And then when they bombed a number of Iranian factories, Iran began striking factories in the Persian Gulf, like the aluminum factories in the Emirates and Bahrain and other facilities. So anything that they do, Iran is going to hit back harder. And that includes oil and gas, of course. So if Trump carries out the threat that he again made yesterday, that he'll destroy all of Iran's key infrastructure, these are crimes against humanity, and no one in the West is complaining about it. No one is saying that this is outrageous, just like no one is saying that it's outrageous to strangle the uh, Cuban people. You know, the elites in the West, whether it's the media or whether it's the left or the right or the liberal, they're all the same. They're all the same. They may dislike each other, but they're all the same when it comes to empire. So if he does that, if Trump moves to destroy our key infrastructure, Iran will destroy everything. There will be nothing left. And if that happens, then the Strait of Hormuz, opening it or closing it, really is irrelevant because there will be nothing left to export. So it's really Trump's choice. Iran did not start this war. If you watch Western media, you would not know this. Iran did not start this war. Iran did not murder the leader of any other country. Iran did not begin a war by slaughtering children, which was intentional. The first targets are always very well vetted. There's no chance that this was a mistake, targeting the school in Minab. I saw uh, Human Rights Watch uh, write something about Iran's missiles and saying 4 people in Israel and the Israeli regime were killed, and this is I don't know, crime against the humanity or. And someone, I didn't check their previous reports, but someone told me that they haven't even said anything about Minab.
They
It's
didn't.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable how Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, how disgusting and disgraceful they are, and how openly they are just tools of empire. Uh, this is what we're dealing with. So Iran has to be tough. Iran has to be hit back hard, and it will do so. So we'll have to see if they continue. We'll have to see what happens in the coming days. But no doubt, there's no doubt that if they strike Iranian water supplies and um, and um, and other such key assets of the country and infrastructure of the country or desalination plants, then Iran will hit back much harder than then they're the first in response.
Pete Hegseth today with General Kane, both of them said that the United States and Israel have reduced the capabilities of Iranian arm production in talking about missiles and drones. And from what we've learned from the IRGC, the new report coming out, because the argument that they were trying to make in this new briefing, they said the reason that the number of missiles and drones are reducing because they're not producing them. That's why it's happening. But from this report, we see the numbers are going up instead of going down. And you see in, for example, in March 27 or March 11th, we had 33 missiles going to Israel or the Persian Gulf, Arab states. Right now it's 40. It's all time high if you consider that. The number of drones is 63, which both of them are somehow increasing than before. And they're not providing even accurate information because there is nothing on the part. Nobody's reporting what the Iranian part is talking about. For these reports from IRGC, the real number of what's going on, what they're firing at Israel. And is the production of the arms, missiles, and drones happening as we talk? Because my understanding is they're producing 24/7. Is that the case?
Yes, they are producing 24/7, and also they've been making and creating these missiles and drones for 20 years now. They can, and most of the underground bases have not been uh, used yet. They're waiting for orders. Iran is only using known missile bases so that the others can be used and remain secret and then be used when the time comes. So, I mean, they were saying this on day 3 and day 4. And during the first week, they brought those charts and they kept showing how they were decreasing by the day in numbers. Well, okay, if that's the case, then let's continue this war. It's the Iranian side that has no problem with continuing the war. The Trump regime wants out. So the Iranians are saying, come and invade. And we're waiting for you because the Iranians want them to attack. The Iranians want to land attack. They want this war to go on because they want to give the Trump regime a punishing response so that this will never happen again. It's not that Iran wants war. It's the fact that Iran wants to make this the last war. It wants to make sure that the United States does not come back in a year or 6 months or a year and a half or 2 years to threaten the country or to strike the country again. So he can say all he wants on television, but the Iranians are saying, let's go on, let's continue with this war and come on in, invade the country, take our islands, take our territory. We're waiting for you. We'll give you tributes, we'll give you gifts. So come in. It's all nonsense. He knows it. Everyone knows it. The media knows it. The media that opposes Trump is now speaking critically, not because they're any different from him. They're the same. But things are not looking good, and they want their revenge on Trump. And they know that this is going downhill for the United States because the energy crisis is just beginning to be felt, Nima. And this is sad. I mean, I don't want the world, and no one in Iran wants the world to suffer the consequences. But there is no option left for us. This oil, this LNG, these fertilizers are coming from countries that are family dictatorships and that host US forces and facilitate the attacks on Iran. And then they stand back and say we're neutral, and they moan and groan about Iran's retaliation. This has to come to an end. And it can come to an end if these countries expel the United States and say we will no longer allow our territories to be used, then they will have gone a long way to ending this situation. But in any case, Iran is not going to allow the United States to use the Persian Gulf in future as a platform to attack Iran. And Iran is going to be unforgiving to these regimes. They will have to pay full compensation to Iran for the crimes that they've committed and continue to commit against the Iranian people. Every one of these poultry farms, every one of these pharmaceutical farms, every woman that is murdered on the streets by these missiles, they're going to have to pay for it.
The other dimension of the war is the economic war and the way that Donald Trump is trying to manipulate the market in each and every Monday or Friday or Sunday. He's trying to put something out to manipulate the market. But the market right now, this week, we've seen the market doesn't that much consider, doesn't, see what Donald Trump is talking about because they see the manipulation of the president of the United States. But accepting what has happened so far, this manipulation for Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, they're making a lot of money about these manipulations.
Oh, of
And
course.
on the other hand, we have a new player in this game, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the head of the parliament in Iran, who came to the scene by giving Americans, providing investment advisory service for the US financial markets, which was somehow blasting on X. How do you understand the way that Iran is confronting the United States on each and every front?
Well, I'm told or I've read, not I'm told, I've read that that Dr. Kalibov's tweet turned out to be right.
Yeah,
And those who followed his advice
right.
made the right move. And the fact is that the entire political elite in the United States is utterly corrupt. And they are doing insider trading. Now, those who are close to the center of power, of course, make more money. But Trump's opponents, as Trump's ship sinks, they're going to target people around Trump. They won't target their own people, but they'll increasingly target people around Trump for insider trading, not because they are against corruption, but because this the ship is sinking, this is not working, and they'd like to blame Trump for it, not because of for humanitarian reasons, not because they are decent people, but because it's politically the right thing for them to do. But Dr. Ghalibaf's tweet, I think people should follow him. They should definitely follow him. And he's statements that he makes that he's been making about the battlefield and the future of the war. I think are important to take into consideration. People know him less, but he's also very important, especially because he used to be a senior general in the armed forces, and he's had important jobs throughout the last few decades.
The Telegraph reported thousands of flights canceled as jet fuel costs soar, and Donald Trump is trying to put pressure on the United Kingdom, for example, to you have to buy it from us or join the war against Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. And what is your assessment, Professor Marandi, on Europeans' position so far? They said we know that they're trying to do everything to defend Israel. But on the other hand, they're not willing to join in the Strait of, so far from what we've learned, is they said this is not our war. Germany said that, United Kingdom said that, we have Spain having a very bold sort of stance on what's going on in the Middle East. We had Italy the same way. French, today Donald Trump was tweeting and was, posting that the French is not cooperating with them to use their airspace. What is happening in the mind of Europeans? Because it seems that after all, they see the long-term strategy somehow. I don't know, what is your take on that? What do you make of it?
Well, I'm talking about their elites, not European ordinary people, but these European elites are like rats who see that the ship is sinking. They're in a lot of trouble already as it is. I mean, the Ukraine war has depleted their resources, and of course, foolish policies even before then of the EU EU policies have pushed them in this direction, but the EU is not in a position to wage war against Iran. They are already losing the war in Ukraine, and they've emptied their pockets. They're entering a long, long European winter, and it may last for many years and decades. So they understand where things are going, and increasingly in the United States, people understand where things are going. And by the way, the fact that Trump is now saying that they may discontinue this war and leave the Strait of Hormuz as it is, no one in Iran believes that. The belief here is that he is preparing to launch the ground offensive, and the evidence indicates that. So this is all about uh, manipulating the market, as you said earlier. Uh, it is widely believed that an assault on Iran is imminent, and despite the fact that we all hate war, they started this war. But the belief is that this is necessary. We have to go through this next stage to make sure that this never happens again. Well, first of all, from my understanding, I don't know about the second AWAC. I read that report that you mentioned, but the first AWACS, the one that we've seen the picture of it destroyed, that was hit by a drone. From what I've read in Iranian sources and Iranian media, it was a drone that struck it, and this shows how vulnerable the United States is. It's not like some hypersonic missile went and destroyed it. It's a inexpensive drone that went and destroyed a key U.S. Uh, uh, airplane that is vital, especially now that all their radar installations, except for the one in Turkey, which Iran won't strike because of the relationship with Turkey, but Turkey continues to allow AWACS jets to fly over its airspace and gather intelligence against Iran. Anyway, but these Arab regimes are detached from reality, Nemo. From the very beginning, they were hoping that the United States would destroy um, key Iranian infrastructure, murder key Iranian leaders, and that Iran would capitulate. They're just proxies of the United States. They don't have much agency. I'm not saying they're all identical, and but when Trump says that Mohammed in public says that Mohammed bin Salman has to kiss him wherever, it just shows the nature of the relationship. So it's not as if Mohammed bin Salman convinces Trump to do something. Trump is in a commanding position in this relationship. So what he says is, I think, is probably going to be in line with Trumpian thinking, whatever that may be, because it changes from minute to minute. So these regimes are not, they are neither stable, their leaders are not very bright. Mohammed bin Zayed is not a very bright person. He's not a very smart person. I know some of the people around him. I've met them many times. I don't want to humiliate them here by naming them. They're well-known people. I've spent lots of time with at least two of them. They're not very smart. They live in their alternative universe. and because of they have so much, they've accumulated so much wealth for themselves, and they give lots of handouts to. One of the things that's well, first of all, we all know that the Wahhabism, for example, and this the extremism and this Takfiri ideology has been funded by these regimes. Saudi Arabia and Qatar in particular. In recent years, Qatar has done more than anyone else, but in the past, it's historically been Saudi Arabia that leads through these massive networks of religious centers that they have, media outlets that they have, and but all none of them work um, independent of the empire. All of them are in full coordination with the empire. The Emirates, everything that it does in in Yemen or in Sudan, in Somalia, it's done in coordination with the Israeli regime. There may be differences in their policies with one another, but they're all in the Western camp. That's how Wahhabism was spread through extremist groups in Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq and Libya and elsewhere. They used it. They used these terrorists, Qatar especially, helped fund these terrorists, and sadly, the Erdogan uh, people to bring down the Libyan government. Syria is more famous instance because it took so long for the West and the United States to bring it down and install a puppet regime. But Libya was came first, so they are not independent actors. They may be affiliated to different people in the West, in the United States. Their lobbies are not the same. Uh, and the Emirates lobby they have a certain sector of people in the United States that lobby for them. They fund them, they promote them, think tanks, centers at universities. Qatar has a different set of people. Often they're in conflict with each other. But at the end of the day, none of them work outside the realm of the uh, U.S. camp.
Yeah. Netanyahu says that he wants to make some sort of coalition, some sort of alliance with Arab states in the region to go against the axis of resistance. I think it somehow is so, when it comes to this sort of a strategy on his part, it's so delusional because who's gonna be the army? The people of these countries are totally against what's going on in Gaza, against what's going on with this new war. So it seems that as though, if the leadership is agreeing with Netanyahu, he assumes that the people, the public opinion favors him. Eh, Does he know? Do they have? Because they say Mossad is so powerful, Mossad doing this and that. How powerful are they to understand the reality of the Middle East?
Well, we're told that it was the head of Mossad that convinced the United States to get involved in this war and that Iran would immediately collapse. They mythologize their own capabilities. Iran has been fighting for over a month now, for over a month, against this huge coalition. Some are directly involved, like these dictatorships. Some are less involved, but still involved, like the regime in Baku or Erdogan in Turkey. Some are indirectly involved because they're firmly in the US camp, like the Europeans. They don't want to get involved militarily because they know it will hurt them more and they're already in deep trouble. But they still antagonize Iran. They still work against Iran. They still impose maximum pressure against ordinary Iranians and use sanctions to target everyone in Iran. There was I wish I had looked this up before coming on your show. There's this report that says I'm going to get it wrong, but that over the last 50 years, U.S. sanctions across the world have killed like 37 million people. Uh, I tweeted it, I think, yesterday, uh, and but this is what we're dealing with. It's the United States has a series of countries that are its allies and its proxies, and they all work together. So in the case of Iran, they're all working together against the country. All of the Israeli analysts, the Israeli regime analysts, U.S. analysts, they all got it wrong. They all got it wrong. So their knowledge of Iran is very limited. Some say, well, why are they effective in carrying out assassinations? That's what they do. They're good at it. It's just like they've been assassinating since Kennedy. So, they have a history of when they can assassinate the U.S. president, then obviously and get away with it, then obviously, that is their specialty. But still, they haven't been able to deter Iran. They haven't been able to weaken Iran. Iran continues to fight, continues to hold its ground against this huge coalition alongside its allies in Lebanon, in Iraq, and in Yemen. And you're absolutely correct. When Netanyahu speaks about this coalition that he wants to build, he's basically humiliating Mohammed bin Salman and the others, just as Trump did, because people hate them. People do not support the West and these regimes in their war against Iran. Look at the comment section in Al Jazeera Arabic and in media outlets. People across the Arab world are supporting Iran. People across the global south are supporting Iran. A substantial number of people in the West are supporting the Islamic Republic of Iran and the axis of resistance, despite the mainstream media, despite the takfiris doing their best to slander the Iranians and they're all working overtime, but it's not working.
Professor Marandi, I know that in the parliament, one of the members of the parliament in Iran was talking about NPT. What would be the Iran's policy if the NPT is not capable? Not only NPT, we had Lavrov talking about international law is not respected by the president of the United States because they're attacking hospitals, schools in Iran, and nobody, it doesn't seem that the president of the United States cares about international law. And when it comes to these international institutions who are not protecting, for example, the main objective of NPT, for example, is to protect, IAEA is to protect Iran because they're part of, NPT. But they're going against Iran instead of protecting Iran. What is happening in Iran when it comes to NPT, these international institutions, which is supposed to be important?
Sorry for interrupting. I think you're alluding to Dr. Urujerdi, right? He said that a couple of days ago. Yes, actually, I saw him 2-3 nights ago, and we spoke about this. That's increasingly becoming the consensus in Iran that we should leave the NPT, not because we want to build a nuclear weapon, but we want to protect our vital infrastructure so that they can't bomb it in future. If they have access and they're going to give that material, that knowledge, that information to the United States so that it could, at some point in the future, attack. So the Iranians are saying they bomb us, they murder us, they sanction us. We have nothing to lose. They're waging war against us. So let's leave the NPT and build our own infrastructure where they can never find it. And it's not very difficult. I think Professor Posel on your program and elsewhere has explained how Iran, how technologically advanced it is, Iran, and how easy it is for Iran with the new technologies. I mean, the world is changing by the hour. You have AI now. You have swift advances in the new technologies. So for Iran, it's not like before where you had to have these huge centrifuges, like the IR-1s. And now you have much more advanced centrifuges. You can enrich uranium and do many other things. I mean, the nuclear industry. I mean, the cancer patients in Iran need. And by the way, one of the pharmaceutical companies that were bombed, they were producing cancer medicine for cancer patients. But the nuclear industry is very broad and very important for the country. So there is serious talk. I've been saying this for years now, but it's becoming a I mean, when Miss Dr. Burujerdi says this,
Mm.
he's pretty high up in Parliament, and I think the sentiments are there. And of course, the question is, what leverage does the West have against Iran? They've done everything. They've been slaughtering women on the streets of Tehran. They've been slaughtering, and of course, without any complaints in the West or by Human Rights Watch, or which instead attacks Iran. But I think that's the direction we may be going in.
Yeah. You've mentioned the case of Lebanon. Lebanon is right now is fighting the way that the Israeli, the head of IDF says that they are on the verge of collapse because of significant casualties that are happening in southern part of Lebanon. Not casualties, they have their tanks being destroyed by Lebanon and the axis of resistance Hezbollah in Lebanon. On the other hand, you see you know, they're trying to put pressure on an Iranian ambassador in Lebanon, Professor Marandi.
They murdered, I think, in two attacks, they've murdered 10 Iranian diplomats. Has the UN said anything about it? Have Western diplomats in Lebanon said anything about it? No, they don't care.
Yeah. But that doesn't make any sort of, pressure on Hezbollah, because the whole game is to put pressure on Hezbollah, when it comes to the Iranian ambassador, when it comes to other political moves. Hezbollah is coming out, for many people are somehow surprised how prepared was Hezbollah and how they're somehow participating in this war. Do you think that Hezbollah is finding itself in a new position, which would be, many people were arguing after the assassination of Seyed Hassan Nasrallah? They said these people who are now the head of Hezbollah, they were fighting on the battlefield. Right now, they're commanders in Hezbollah, they're decision makers in Hezbollah. Is that the case?
Well, we've been discussing this for a year now. After the ceasefire in Lebanon, the narrative in the West was that Hezbollah's diminished force, even though the Israeli regime was unable to take any territory. It was only after the ceasefire, because the Lebanese government is a is an agent of the West, and they the regimes in the Persian Gulf and Western governments together combined forced this government to be formed, and it is uh, not supportive of the resistance at all. Even though the majority of Lebanese, according to polls and according to elections that take place in Lebanon, support the resistance. So they are able to manipulate politics in Lebanon to get an anti-resistance government in power every time, and this is probably the most anti-resistance government that we've ever seen so far in action. So despite all that, and so they said Hezbollah. So under them, they allowed the Israelis to come forward after the ceasefire. They refused to protect the South and allowed the Israeli regime to come in. And as you and I remember, and everyone else remembers, they were constantly saying Hezbollah is a diminished force, and I would always say that that's not the case. And Hezbollah is a powerful force, and it has been heroic. It entered the fight in order to protect Gaza, in order to draw away forces from Gaza, so that fewer children would be massacred. They sacrificed their own children. They sacrificed their own men and women. And the Takfiris were gloating. I mean, the Takfiris and many in the West were gloating about Hezbollah. That, like they wanted to believe they failed, because the Takfiris are no different from the Zionists. They're all a part of this broader camp. They're funded. They're created. They're trained in centers that are funded by Qatar and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and the Bahraini regime and so on, and sadly um, in places which are controlled by Erdogan. But that turned out to be false, and our assessments were true, just like our assessments about Iran were true. We were sure that when this war was ultimately waged, that they would fail. And we said that all this would happen. But they believe in their own they believe their own propaganda. Uh, I mean, propaganda is it's fine. They can, the Takfiris and the Zionists and the West can use all the anti-Iranian propaganda that they want, but they should be careful not to believe their own propaganda, because though they formulate policies that that fail. They hit brick walls all the time, and they wonder why. They should learn about the resistance. They should learn from sources close to the resistance. Of course, they should learn from people from close to Hezbollah to understand why Hezbollah is so powerful. Why is it that they are so steadfast? Why is it that they are so unique in the world that we live in? Stand is being located right beside the Israeli regime, but being willing to make sacrifices, not just to defend their own land, but to defend the Palestinian people. And as I said, their assessment of Iran is always wrong, just like their assessment of Yemen has always been wrong. They always ridiculed Yemen. But then when the Americans launched a war against Yemen, we saw that Yemen had the upper hand. The same is true in Iraq. And, I just said this on another program a while back. Some of these analysts, a couple of very good analysts wrote a book about Iran a decade ago. Flint and Hillary Leverett. They worked in the White House. Flint was Catholic, Hillary Jewish. They met in the White House actually, and they married there. So they worked at the center of power. He was the head of the national the Middle East for the National Security Council under Condoleezza Rice. He resigned over the Iraq War, and she was the head of the Persian Gulf. So they knew this region. After they left, they wrote a book, Going to Tehran, which is a very good book, actually. I don't agree with everything in it, but if there's one book I'd advise about Iran that I'd advise people to read, is this book. And they were saying that we should go to Tehran and solve our problems. And they dealt with many of the myths about Iran. Well, if they had, these two people were humiliated. Well, I don't know if that's the right word. They're dignified people. They tried to humiliate them. They were marginalized. They were, ridiculed. But if these analysts and the people of influence in Washington had actually read their book and read it objectively, and refrained from listening to Zionists and Wahhabi and Takfiri, Salafi propaganda promoted by these dictatorships in the Persian Gulf region, then we would not be in this war today. The nature of the relationship would have been completely different. Probably by now there would have been political relations between Iran and the United States. If people had just read the book. I advise your viewers to buy the book, to read the book. It's a few years old, but I think it's still, again, I'm not saying everything in it I agree with, but I think it's probably a very good source for people to begin trying to understand the politics of Iran and its foreign policy and its relationship with the United States. And but in the United States, people who talk sense, they are swiftly cast aside as apologists for the regime, or even though they have nothing to do with Iran.
This is the reality, Professor Marandi. It's not just about Iran, it's about Russia, Iran, China. Whoever hates these countries is the expert in Washington to advise the government, to advise, the decision makers, which was hugely, destructive to what has happened so far in both in Russia and Iran right now. And there is no learning curve, Professor Marandi.
No,
it goes flat.
No, not at all. Zero. It's nothing has changed. I think change is going to be forced upon the Trump regime and the regime in Washington after this war, but it's not because they become because they've suddenly seen the light. It's because the reality on the ground is going to change.
Professor Marandi, one of the important points for Iran when considering to this war, because we know the death and destruction that is happening in Iran. And Iran, one of the points that Iran is talking about is reparation. They have to pay for that. One of the practical ways of receiving that is the Strait of Hormuz. Is Iran going to charge all of these countries who participated or somehow cooperated with the United States during, this war on Iran, using the Strait of Hormuz, receiving the money, putting some sort of fee, new line in the way that they're put, they charge these countries?
Yes, I think that is a decision that has been made. And it's not just about receiving reparations for the enormous damage that they continue to inflict on our country. I mean, every day they're bombing us. This morning they bombed us. This afternoon they bombed us. Last night they bombed us in Tehran and in other cities, and they're doing it all the time. As I said, they're targeting farming. They're targeting everything: pharmaceutical companies, factories, universities. They're targeting in, key industrial uh, factories for the country's uh,
Yeah.
future.
Basically, food production. Yeah, we've seen
Yeah,
that.
exactly. They're targeting everything. So every day the price goes up. They're going to pay for this, no doubt. But it's not just about reparations. It is also about changing the facts on the ground. Iran will use the leverage that it has to make sure that these countries are no longer a platform for Western military bases to carry out death and destruction and slaughter in Iran or anywhere else, because they've used those bases against Yemen. They've used all the crimes he committed. And these regimes were supporting Saddam Hussein. But when the United States invaded Iraq, Iran was the only country that opposed it. I was a part of the anti-war movement in the UK. I was a student there. I was in those protests, especially the huge one in London. Seyed Hassan Nasrallah spoke out against it very openly and very clearly. But these regimes provided the platform for the United States. Iran, they want to have political, economic, business relations. It's fine. Who cares? No one here cares, except for Israel, the Israeli regime. But if they want to host bases so that those bases can be used against Iran or others and its allies in the region, the Strait of Hormuz is that leverage that.
Yeah, it seems we have some sort of problem with Professor Marandi's connection. Yeah. Yeah, it seems that. Can you hear me, Professor Marandi? Yeah. It seems that let me just check it out if he's connected. Yeah, he's out. And he's gonna get back just in a minute. I think he's gonna be back just a minute. Yeah. I think what Iran has learned so far from the war is how important is Iraq and the neighborhood. Yeah, Professor Marandi is back.
Sorry about that. That's how it is these days.
Yeah.
What was I saying when I got cut off?
You were mentioning Iraq and the war in Iraq, how they opposed the war in Iraq. Iran and Seyed Hassan Nasrallah all together opposed the war in Iraq.
But these regimes, these family dictatorships, they hosted U.S. forces to and constructive at all. In order to these sort of against Iran, others to happen in future, the Strait of Hormuz is rich.
Yeah. It seems we have the problem. We still have the problem with the connection, Professor Marandi.
Okay, you couldn't hear me?
Yeah, no, we couldn't hear you. We couldn't hear your response. And then,
Let me try one more time. One more. Sorry.
okay, yeah, he's gonna be back. Unfortunately, the internet connection is not good right now, but he's gonna get back. Mm. And they're not gonna, these Arab states, they're not gonna learn anything. I don't see the. Yeah, you're back, Professor Marandi. Your point. Your point. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying that these family dictatorships, they've been used as platforms against multiple countries, against Syria, against Iraq, against Yemen, against Iran, against Lebanon. And of course, all of this is to protect the Israeli regime. All of these bases, even that these family dictatorships have figured that out by now. But Iran is not going to allow this to be them to be a platform for aggression in future. And the Strait of Hormuz is a part of that leverage that the Iranians have to make sure that it doesn't. So it's not just about reparations. It's also to make sure that the West doesn't have a foothold here so that they can carry out another war 6 months from now, or a year from now, or a year and a half from now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Marandi. Great pleasure.
Thank you, Nima. Sorry for.
Yeah, we totally understand the reality of what's going on.
Yeah. But I do advise your viewers to read the book "Going to Tehran" by Clinton Hillary.
Yeah.
It's a very good book.
Yeah. Thank you.
Again, I don't agree with everything in it, but I think it's a very good book.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Marandi.
Thank you, Nima.